Coming up today, the government promises extra action on job creation. The range of fresh initiatives specifically focus on getting more young people and women back to work. North Korea announces that its first ruling party congress for 3.5 decades will open next Friday. It comes as Pyongyang is believed to be prepping a fifth nuclear test. Plus, a big night in the race for the White House with hundreds of delegates at stake on both sides. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton further cement their chances of winning their respective nominations. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Wednesday, the 27th of April. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. The nation's economy is our starting point this afternoon, and creating jobs for young people and women has always been high on the agenda of the Park Geun-hye administration as it seeks to kickstart the ailing economy. Now it's announcing a new set of measures to tackle the issue, and this time the focus is on resolving the mismatch in the labour market. Our Hwang Ji-hye starts us off.
The Korean government is gearing up to take on the role of job coordinator, announcing a fresh set of measures to support job creation initiatives benefiting young people and women. The government said Wednesday it will designate a special employment day to connect job seekers and corporations.
At the nation's 17 innovation centers, we will hold an Employment Day event every month. We will also hold other job fairs in designated industries and promote projects connecting companies and undergraduates. Through these events, we aim to facilitate employment for 40,000 job seekers this year.
The government also plans to provide some financial support to young job seekers while also encouraging them to work at smaller firms. A majority of young people pin their hopes on landing a job at a large conglomerate like Hyundai or Samsung because smaller-sized companies often offer lower wages. Part of the government's plan is to give young people cash incentives of up to $5,000 if they sign up to work at a small or medium-sized company for a minimum of 2 years. The government will also extend the repayment period for student loans for people with an income of less than $18,000. Korea's youth unemployment rate hit a record high in February, and the figure has stayed at the double-digit level for a second straight month in March, stoking concerns of a dwindling labor force. The government's plan to raise the female labor participation rate involves allowing women workers to take a portion of their maternity leave while they're pregnant. The state will also provide a tax credit for small and mid-sized firms that hire women whose careers have been interrupted due to childbirth and child-rearing. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Korea's consumer sentiment improved for a second straight month in April. The Bank of Korea says the index came in at 101 this month, up a single point from a month earlier. The slight improvement is mainly attributed to the recent rise in the local stock market and robust automobile sales. The index had been on a downward streak since December of last year, but rebounded in March. A reading above 100 means optimists outnumber pessimists. Korea's big three shipbuilders are still the world's three biggest by-order backlog, despite their troubled management. According to data from UK-based Clarkson Research Services, Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering had orders of 7.82 million compensated gross tons as of the end of March, far exceeding those of other shipbuilders. Hyundai Heavy Industries were second, followed by Samsung Heavy Industries. Shipbuilders worldwide have suffered huge losses in recent years since the 2008 global financial crisis, and especially so here in Korea. But Korea's Financial Services Commission says it was too early to discuss a merger among the three shipbuilders. President Park Geun-hye has expressed her hope to meet with the leaders of Korea's three main political parties following her trip to Iran next week. The parties have responded relatively positively to the proposal. Our political correspondent Park Ji-won reports.
The ruling Saenuri party, still taking stock following its defeat in the general election, has welcomed the president's move, saying there has to be a concerted effort from the government and the National Assembly to press on amid the security crisis and economic slowdown.
Our party will do its utmost to turn this crisis into an opportunity. We'll do this by closely cooperating with the government and opposition parties.
The interim leader of the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, Kim Jong-in, was more cautious, saying his party would consider the idea once President Park officially calls a four-way meeting. The party criticized the presidential office, saying it lacks a genuine willingness to communicate with the opposition blocs.
It's very regrettable that we couldn't find any self-reflection or desire for change, which should be the basis of communication.
The minor opposition People's Party says it will positively examine the meeting when the presidential office makes an official proposal. The party said it's always ready to talk and cooperate to improve the people's livelihoods, but stressed the meeting needs to focus on producing tangible results.
President Park said she'd lead change and reform while cooperating with the National Assembly by reflecting the people's will as seen in the election results. Now is the time to put the words into action.
At a meeting with the head editors of Korea's news networks on Tuesday, President Park said she wanted to meet with the political leaders after she returns from her four-day trip to Iran early next week. It appears the meeting, if confirmed, will take place in early May or mid-May. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The White House has vowed to ramp up the pressure on North Korea to halt its nuclear activities. White House spokesman Josh Earnest said the U.S. is going to make it clear to the North that it must choose to rejoin the international community with a commitment to denuclearize and comply with international obligations. He also said the U.S. will continue to work closely with China as it has more influence over the North Korean government than any other country in the world. The White House said it could not confirm reports North Korea is preparing for another nuclear test. U.S. President Barack Obama says the United States could destroy North Korea, but it is not doing so because of its proximity to South Korea. He said this is something that needs to be carefully considered. Park Jung-hong reports.
President Obama's words for North Korea were as stern as they could be. In an interview with CBS, Mr. Obama said the U.S. could destroy North Korea with its arsenals, but that its close proximity to ally South Korea should be considered in addition to the subsequent humanitarian costs. He also mentioned some of the difficulties in handling the regime, referring to Pyongyang as, quote, a massive challenge. The top U.S. priority, he said, is to protect the American people and South Korea and Japan, saying those countries are, quote, vulnerable to the provocative actions that North Korea is engaging in. Obama noted that the U.S. was spending a lot more time positioning its missile development systems to set up a shield, quote, that can at least block the relatively low-level threats posed by North Korea. The remarks came as U.S. State Department spokesman Mark Toner urged North Korea to refrain from actions that destabilize the region. He said Washington would consider, quote, other options if Pyongyang continued nuclear and missile testing, stopping short of elaborating on the alternatives. Against this backdrop, sources in Washington cite the possibility of even harsher measures that ramp up the pressure against North Korea. Park Jung-hong, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's foreign minister is set to hold bilateral talks with a handful of his counterparts on the sidelines of the 5th Foreign Ministers meeting at the Conference on Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia, with North Korea expected to dominate discussions in Beijing. There's special attention on Yoon Byung-se's one-on-one with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi on this Wednesday and with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. That meeting will happen on Thursday. Now, Minister Yoon will also give a keynote speech on Thursday, where he will call for closer cooperation from the 26 members of the forum, namely in preventing further North Korean provocations and to address the importance of the thorough implementation of UN Security Council sanctions on the North Korean regime. It's the first time Seoul is sending its top diplomat to the event since it became a member of this group 10 years ago. The date has been set for North Korea's first party congress since 1980. The regime's leadership is expected to consolidate loyalty for Kim Jong-un and announce its economic development plans. Connie Kim reports.
North Korea has announced that its 7th ruling Workers' Party Congress will be held on Friday, May 6th in Pyongyang. It'll be the first time in 36 years for the North to convene the event. Although the specific itinerary is unknown, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is expected to cement his position as supreme leader and lay out his plan to continue the so-called Pyeongjin policy of simultaneous nuclear and economic development. The convention will also discuss the party's long-term projects and set party lines. Since announcing its plans to hold the event back in October last year, the North has been mobilizing its citizens to prepare for the rare Congress and has been holding rubber stamp elections to select delegations for the event. The party conference, however, is expected to be a mostly domestic event, with few foreign guests attending, given the level of North Korea's isolation following its recent nuclear and missile provocations. 177 delegations from 118 countries, including China and Russia, attended the 6th Party Congress in October 1980. However, in an effort to promote the event, the North has reportedly allowed some foreign press to cover the Congress that's expected to last 3 to 4 days. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, it was another Super Tuesday in the United States. Voters across 5 states, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Connecticut, Delaware and Rhode Island, cast their ballots for the primaries that could tell, really, which candidates are closer to the presidential nomination finish line. According to U.S. broadcasters, including CNN and ABC News, Republican frontrunner Donald Trump won by a landslide in all 5 states and shut out his rivals, the closest rival being Ted Cruz, of course. The billionaire real estate mogul looks very close now to clinching the GOP nomination. On the other side, Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton also moved closer to locking down the nomination for her party, winning Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Maryland and Delaware. Bernie Sanders won Rhode Island, and though he has pledged to stay in the race until the convention, his path to the nomination has become all but impossible. Now, some bad news for the world's most profitable company. Apple has seen its quarterly profits fall and its revenue drop for the first time since 2003, as its iPhone sales fell for the first time ever. Apple says revenue dropped 13% from a year earlier to around $50.5 billion in its second fiscal quarter. Now, falling iPhone sales were identified as the main reason for the decline. Apple sold slightly over 51 million iPhones during the quarter. That's down 9.9 million units from the same period last year. Analysts say Apple failed to garner as much enthusiasm from consumers compared to when it first sold its big screen models for the first time in 2014. Now, Australia was the second largest importer of Korean cars in the first 3 months of this year, according to statistics by the Korea Automobile Manufacturers Association. Local automakers exported over 45,000 cars to Australia from January to March in 2016. That is up nearly 35% from the previous year. Korean automakers exported a combined 653,000 units overseas in the first quarter, but the overall total was actually down 11% from a year ago. Last year, Australia beat out Canada as the third largest importer of Korean cars after the United States and Saudi Arabia. Australia moved up to second place this year after Korea saw its auto exports to Saudi Arabia cut in half, basically, in the first 3 months of this year. Well, that's all we have for now, pretty much, on this Wednesday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Just a reminder that if you can't catch us on a television, you can go to our website, arirang.com/news. All the latest stories are there, as well as our VOD section, so you can catch up on previous newscasts if you want to. And also we have our smartphone application, which you can find by going to your app store and searching for Arirang TV. There, not only will you find all our news stories, but you also find the latest programs that we broadcast around the world. Well, we'll be back with our next scheduled newscast. That is coming up at 3 p.m. Korea time. That will be hosted by our very own Han Dan. So until then, goodbye.